My name is Chloe. I'm 33, and I'm a financial analyst living in Boston. I just spent $6,000 of my personal savings to rent a stunning lakeside lodge for a family reunion, a celebration for my parents' 40th anniversary. When I showed up, my arms filled with party decorations. The place was a ghost town. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from my mother. We decided to just have dinner at Nana's house instead. 2 hours later, Mom and my sister appeared, walking up the path laughing. "We brought you a plate," Mom said, holding up a plastic Tupperware container. I forced a smile onto my face. "If you're watching this, I'd love it if you let me know where you're watching from. Go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and you'll want to stick around to find out how that moment became the one where I finally stood up for myself after a lifetime of being taken for granted." Growing up in a classic middle-class suburb outside Boston, our family of 6 seemed like the perfect picture of unity. My parents, Helen and Robert, raised us with a deep belief in traditional family values. As the youngest of 4, I idolized my older brothers Michael and David and my sister Jessica. Every single month we had a mandatory Sunday dinner, a ritual my dad insisted on to keep our family ties strong. Those dinners were loud, full of laughter, updates on our lives, and the occasional passionate but friendly argument. From a young age, I just sort of fell into the role of the family's designated caretaker. While my siblings pursued their own passions, I was the one who remembered everyone's birthday, who organized the Christmas and Thanksgiving celebrations, and who made sure everyone felt seen on their big days. I even kept a detailed file on my computer with everyone's little preferences. Dad liked pecan pie, not apple. Michael had a mild allergy to peanuts. David had a thing for anything with caramel, and Jessica adored getting fresh-cut peonies. Our annual family trips to a rented cabin on Lake Champlain created some of my most treasured memories. We'd go for 2 whole weeks, spending our days swimming, kayaking, and hiking through the woods. At night, we'd gather around a crackling bonfire, toasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. Those moments, sitting under a canopy of stars with my family, felt like magic. It felt like we were connected by some invisible, unbreakable thread. My mother, Helen, would often tell me, "Chloe, you have such a generous spirit. You're the glue that holds this family together." Her words would swell my chest with pride and a sense of mission. Being needed by them, by my family, gave me an identity and a feeling of belonging that I held on to tightly. When I was 18, I earned a scholarship to study finance at Boston College. As thrilled as I was for the opportunity, leaving my family behind was tough. Throughout my college years, I made the 3-hour drive back home at least twice a month, usually pulling in late on a Friday night with a batch of homemade brownies or some small, thoughtful gift for each person. During finals week, when all my classmates were locked in the library, I was still the one online, ordering a birthday gift for David or helping Jessica with the logistics of planning her wedding from afar. During my junior year, my dad had to have a minor surgery. I took a full week off from my classes to go home and help out, cooking meals and driving him to his follow-up appointments. My professors were mostly understanding, but my roommate Sarah started to question my choices. "Chloe, your family is made up of fully grown, capable adults," she said one night. "They were managing just fine before you came along. They can definitely handle a week without you." Her words stung because they directly challenged the role I had so carefully constructed for myself. But I brushed off her concerns, telling myself that my family needed me in a way that an outsider just couldn't grasp. After I graduated, I landed a great job at a financial firm in Boston. Even though I was now living a few hundred miles away from my family, I was determined to maintain my role as the family caretaker. I set up a complex system of calendar reminders for every important date, sent regular care packages, and made frequent calls just to check in on everyone. When Jessica had her first child, I used 3 weeks of my precious vacation time to go stay with her and help with the newborn. When Michael was going through a messy divorce, I spent my weekends driving out to help him move into his new apartment and get it organized. The very first holiday season after I moved to Boston, I was adamant about hosting Thanksgiving in my tiny one-bedroom apartment. I spent weeks planning the menu, buying decorations, and turning my small living space into the perfect festive setting. Everyone praised the food and the cozy atmosphere, and my mom gave me a big hug, whispering, "What would we ever do without our Chloe? No one looks after us the way you do." Those words were all the validation I needed. They erased all the exhaustion and reinforced my belief that I was fulfilling my most important purpose, being the one person my family could always, without a doubt, depend on. When my dad turned 60, I threw him a massive surprise party. I flew in relatives from all over the country and spent weeks creating a slideshow video of family memories. The look of pure joy on his face when everyone screamed, "Surprise!" made the weeks of secret planning and the $2,000 expense feel completely worth it. During those years, I went on dates here and there, but my relationships never seemed to last. They usually fizzled out once the guy realized that my family would, and always did, come first. Mark, my longest relationship, which lasted nearly 2 years, finally ended things after I had to cancel our special anniversary dinner because Jessica had a last-minute babysitting emergency. You need to figure out where your own life is supposed to fit in with all this family stuff, were his parting words. But I never once regretted my choices. My entire identity was wrapped up in being the reliable one, the organizer, the giver. The approval I got from my family felt like it was worth any personal sacrifice I had to make. When I got my first big bonus at work, I used the money to pay off the last of David's student loan debt, instead of putting it toward my own savings. His tearful thank you call was all the proof I needed that I had made the right decision. As the years went by, our monthly family dinners became a little less frequent, but I fought hard to keep our traditions alive. I started a family newsletter, created a shared digital photo album where everyone could upload pictures, and started our family group chat. I was working overtime to keep everyone feeling connected, despite the growing distances and increasingly busy schedules. I truly believed, with every fiber of my being, that all these efforts were noticed and appreciated, and that they were reciprocated in the ways that really mattered. Looking back on it now, I can see that I was constructing a narrative that wasn't entirely based in reality. But at the time, I honestly believed our family's bond was something special, something mutual. The truth would take years for me to finally see, and even longer for me to accept. The first real crack in the facade appeared on Christmas Eve, just as I was putting the finishing touches on my holiday preparations. I had spent weeks shopping for deeply personal gifts, preparing all the traditional family recipes from scratch, and decorating my entire apartment to look like a winter wonderland. That morning, just as I was arranging the last ornament on the tree, my phone rang. "Honey, we're thinking of just doing something small at our house this year," Mom said, her tone breezy and casual. Jessica's kids have been under the weather, and honestly, everyone's just so exhausted from all the holiday rush. I stood frozen in my kitchen, surrounded by shopping bags overflowing with gifts and all the ingredients for the dishes I knew were everyone's favorites. "But everything is ready to go here," I said, trying my best to keep the crushing disappointment out of my voice. "I've been planning this for weeks." "Oh, you always go a little overboard anyway," Mom laughed lightly. Just bring the gifts over when you come for New Year's. Later that night, as I sat alone on my couch, scrolling through social media and eating Christmas cookies by myself, I saw the photos. Jessica had posted them. It was our entire family, gathered at her house, a huge roasted turkey on the dining table, everyone smiling and wearing matching festive sweaters. The caption read, "Family Christmas Tradition." I hadn't even been invited. When I finally got the courage to call Mom the next day, trying to keep my voice from shaking, she just brushed it off. "Oh, it was a totally last-minute thing. We knew you'd already done so much to prepare, and we didn't want to disappoint you by asking you to change all your plans." The explanation made absolutely no sense, but I chose to accept it, telling myself that families have miscommunications sometimes. Over the next year, I started to notice that my messages in our family group chat were often left unread. When I shared the news about getting a big promotion at work, the congratulations were lukewarm at best. My requests for updates on their lives were usually met with short, dismissive replies like, "All good here," or "Nothing new to report." I tried to schedule video calls, but there was always someone who had a scheduling conflict. I offered to visit home more often, but there was always a reason why the next month would be a better time. When I did manage to visit, the conversations felt stiff and strained, like I was on the outside of 100 inside jokes and references to events I knew nothing about. One Sunday evening, I called David just to chat and heard a lot of noise in the background, the unmistakable sound of a family party. When I asked him what was going on, he hesitated for a long moment before admitting that everyone had gathered for dinner at Mom and Dad's. "We didn't think you'd be able to make the drive on such short notice," he explained, his voice thick with awkwardness. "It was really impromptu. The pattern just kept going, and it got worse." My birthday came and went with nothing more than a few text messages, a stark contrast to the elaborate celebrations I always threw for everyone else. When I sent a group message suggesting we start planning Dad's upcoming birthday party, Jessica replied that they had already taken care of it without offering any details or an invitation. I started to panic. I began sending more gifts, making even more frequent calls, and offering to help with every little problem they had. My thinking was, if I could just be useful enough, just valuable enough, they would have to want to include me again. I transferred money to Michael when he mentioned he was having car trouble, sent elaborate care packages to my nieces and nephews for every minor achievement, and was constantly offering to fly home at a moment's notice if anyone needed anything at all. My friend Sarah noticed the heavy toll this was all taking on me. Over coffee one Saturday, she started asking some pointed questions about what exactly I was getting out of these relationships. "When was the last time any of them called you just to see how you were doing?" she asked. I thought about it, and I couldn't remember. "When was the last time they offered to come visit you in Boston?" "Never," I admitted. "Chloe, I'm worried you're being taken advantage of," she said gently. "Relationships are supposed to be a two-way street." I defended my family fiercely. "They're just busy. They have kids, local commitments. It's different for me being single and living away from home." But her words planted a small seed of doubt in my mind that I couldn't quite shake. That Thanksgiving, I decided to fly home, even though I hadn't received a clear invitation. When I arrived at my parents' house carrying 4 different pies, I had woken up at 4 a.m. to bake before my flight. The atmosphere was incredibly awkward. "We weren't sure you were coming," Mom said, looking completely flustered. "We only set the table for 8. I stood there in the entryway, juggling the pies in my arms, as she explained that they had invited some neighbors over to fill the empty seats. The implication that my seat was considered empty before their neighbors cut me to the core. Throughout the entire meal, the conversation flowed around me, never once including me. They made constant references to a family trip to a cabin in August that I had never even heard about. When I finally asked about it, Michael looked uncomfortable. "Oh, it was just something we threw together at the last minute," he explained, avoiding my gaze. "For 5 days?" I asked, having caught that detail in their conversation. "You were probably swamped with work," Jessica interjected quickly. "We all know how dedicated you are to your career." The truth was, I had only taken 7 vacation days that entire year, saving the rest for family events that apparently I wasn't even being invited to. Later that evening, I overheard my mom and Jessica talking in the kitchen. "Did you have to bring up the cabin trip?" Mom whispered. "You know how she gets, always making us feel guilty when she's not included." "It's exhausting," Jessica agreed. "The constant texting, always wanting to know every little thing, sending all this stuff nobody even asked for." I slipped out of the house before they could see I had heard them, my hands shaking as I grabbed my overnight bag from the guest room. I made up an excuse about having an early client call and drove to a nearby hotel, where I spent the entire night staring at the ceiling, replaying years of family interactions in a new, excruciatingly painful light. The following month, I deliberately pulled back on my communication, waiting to see if anyone would notice or reach out. 3 weeks went by in complete silence before I got a text from my mom. "Are you mad at us about something?" "Dad needs help setting up his new phone." Not a single question about my well-being, just a request for free tech support. I sent back detailed instructions via email but didn't call. Another 2 weeks passed in silence. Christmas was approaching, and there was no discussion of plans in the family chat. When I finally asked directly, Mom replied that they were keeping it simple this year, with no other details offered. I sent gifts like I always did, but only got a group thank you text in return. The gifts for me arrived in late January, thrown together in a single box, none of them individually wrapped, with a note explaining they had been so busy with the holidays they hadn't had time to send them sooner. Valentine's Day came, and social media showed me another family gathering I hadn't known about, a family game night with heart-shaped cookies and decorations. The photos radiated genuine joy and connection, a stark contrast to the strained, awkward interactions I had during my visits. Despite all these glaring red flags, I still believed I could fix whatever was broken. Maybe, if I made one truly grand gesture, something so generous and thoughtful that they couldn't possibly ignore it, I could finally reclaim my place in the family. With my parents' 40th wedding anniversary on the horizon, I saw my chance to rebuild what we had lost. As April neared, bringing with it my parents' milestone 40th anniversary, I saw a golden opportunity to reconnect our splintering family. This celebration could be the perfect catalyst to remind everyone of our shared history, our shared values. I could still remember the stories they told about their wedding day. Mom in her grandmother's restored lace dress, Dad so nervous he almost put the ring on the wrong finger, the reception in my grandparents' backyard, where they danced under strings of lights until sunrise. I started planning 2 months ahead, absolutely determined to create an event worthy of such a momentous occasion. After weeks of research, I found the Overlook Lodge, a picturesque property on Lake Champlain with luxury cabins, a grand main lodge, and its own private beach. It was only a 3-hour drive from my parents' house, close enough for everyone to get there easily, but special enough to feel like a real getaway. The lodge offered an anniversary package that included accommodations for up to 20 people, a private dinner with a customized menu, a professional photographer, and full access to all their amenities, a swimming pool, hiking trails, and spa services. The price tag was steep, $6,000 for the weekend, but I had been saving up for a down payment on a condo, and I decided this was more important. Family first, always. I designed digital invitations featuring old and new family photos, a timeline of my parents' life together, and all the details about the lodge. The responses came back almost immediately, and they were all enthusiastic. "This looks incredible." "We're definitely in," Michael texted. "The kids will go crazy for that pool." "Count us in," wrote Jessica. "What a wonderful idea, honey." "Your father and I are so touched," Mom replied. Even my dad, who was usually pretty reserved, called me to express his gratitude. "This means the world to us, Chloe. Having everyone together is the best gift we could ever ask for." Their positive reactions fueled my excitement. I spent hours on the phone with the lodge's staff, fine-tuning every single detail. For the dinner menu, I made sure to include all of my parents' favorites. Dad's beloved beef Wellington, Mom's favorite lemon herb salmon, and a chocolate raspberry cake from the very same bakery they had used for their wedding. I arranged for the main lodge to be decorated with enlarged photos from their 4 decades together, their honeymoon in Niagara Falls, the day they bought their first house, the birth of each of their children, family vacations, graduations, weddings, and the arrival of their grandchildren. I wanted them to walk into that room and see their entire life's journey celebrated in grand style. For activities, I scheduled a family photography session on the beach, reserved a pontoon boat for a sunset cruise, and even arranged for a local musician to play songs from their wedding playlist during dinner. I ordered custom photo albums as keepsakes for everyone, commissioned a family tree painting, and even had special anniversary wine labels printed with my parents' wedding photo. As the event drew closer, I sent weekly updates to the family group chat, confirming all the details and trying to build anticipation. The responses became less frequent, but I just chalked it up to everyone's busy lives. When I asked for recent photos to complete the displays, only David sent any, but I managed to fill in the gaps with pictures I found on social media. 2 weeks before the event, I called the lodge to triple confirm all the arrangements. Everything was perfectly set. 6 cabins reserved for our family, the main lodge ready for our private dinner, and all my special requests accommodated. The staff seemed almost as excited about the celebration as I was. "Your family is going to be absolutely blown away," the event coordinator assured me. "This is one of the most thoughtful anniversary celebrations we've ever helped organize." 1 week before the big weekend, I sent out a final confirmation message to everyone. Just a reminder that check-in at the Overlook Lodge begins at 3 p.m. on Friday. I'll be there early to make sure everything is perfect. Can't wait to celebrate Mom and Dad's incredible 40 years together. See you all there. The replies were sparse, but still positive. Mom replied with a heart emoji. David confirmed they'd be arriving around 5 p.m., and Jessica asked if the lodge had high chairs available for her youngest, a request I took care of immediately, messaging her back a confirmation. Michael didn't respond, but he was always terrible about checking his messages, so I wasn't too worried. The day before the event, I took a personal day off from work to drive up to the lodge. The 3-hour journey gave me time to daydream about the perfect weekend ahead, our family reconnecting, memories being shared, and maybe even some healing of the distance that I had felt growing between us. I pictured my mom's face when she saw the photo display, my dad tearing up during the anniversary toast I had prepared, my nieces and nephews all playing together on the beach while the adults reminisced, and strengthened our bonds. I arrived at the Overlook Lodge at noon, giving myself plenty of time to oversee the final setup. The place was even more beautiful than the pictures, with its rustic chic main lodge overlooking the crystal blue water, charming individual cabins tucked away among the pine trees, and immaculate grounds bursting with spring flowers. The staff welcomed me warmly and gave me a tour of all the spaces we would be using. The private dining room was being transformed exactly to my specifications, with round tables draped in cream-colored linens, centerpieces of roses and hydrangeas, my mom's wedding flowers, and twinkling fairy lights creating a magical atmosphere. A table near the entrance held all the framed photos and memorabilia I had shipped ahead of time. I personally inspected each cabin, making sure they were perfectly prepared for their occupants. For my parents, I had reserved the premium lakefront cabin, which had a private deck and a fireplace. I placed a gift basket in each room, tailored to the preferences of each family member, their favorite snacks, drinks, and other small, thoughtful items. By 6 p.m., everything was perfect. I checked into my own cabin, showered, and changed into a new blue dress I had bought specifically for the weekend. The lodge was quiet and peaceful, filled with the gentle sound of waves lapping at the shore and birds calling in the distance. I sat on my porch, watching the sun begin to set, and felt a profound sense of accomplishment. Whatever distance had grown between us, this shared experience would surely bridge it. As 7 p.m. approached, the scheduled arrival time for most of the family, I walked over to the main lodge to greet everyone. I had arranged for welcome cocktails and appetizers to be served as people arrived, giving everyone a chance to settle in before our dinner at 8:30. 7:30 came and went, no arrivals. I checked my phone over and over again, but there were no messages. At 7:45, I called my mom, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted the group chat. Everything is ready and beautiful at the lodge. Let me know if anyone needs directions. No response. By 8:15, with dinner preparations in full swing and still no sign of a single family member, a knot of anxiety began to tighten in my stomach. I called each of them one by one, but every call went to voicemail. I paced the empty lodge, trying to reassure the increasingly concerned staff that my family would be there any minute. Probably just delayed by traffic, I said, or trying to get all the kids ready. At 8:45, my phone finally lit up with a message. It was from Mom. We decided to have a small gathering at your grandmother's house instead. The drive to the lodge just seemed too long for your father after his busy week. Hope you understand. I stared at the message, completely unable to process the words on the screen. They had decided, without telling me. After all the planning, all the expense, all the anticipation, I called her immediately, but again, it went to voicemail. I sent frantic messages to everyone, demanding to know what was happening, but I got no replies. The knot in my stomach tightened as I had to approach the restaurant manager and explain that our party's dinner would need to be delayed. The look of sympathy on his face only deepened my humiliation. An hour later, as I sat alone on a bench overlooking the darkened lake, a pair of headlights appeared in the lodge's driveway. A single car pulled up, and I recognized my mother and Jessica getting out. They walked toward me casually, as if they were just arriving for a normal visit, not hours late to a meticulously planned anniversary celebration. There you are, Mom said, holding up a plastic container. We brought you some leftovers from Nana's. Everyone says hi. I stood frozen on the resort's wooden walkway, just staring at my mother and sister in the soft glow of the pathway lights. Helen looked completely relaxed in a casual sweater and jeans, certainly not dressed for the elegant anniversary dinner I had spent months planning. Jessica was already on her phone, barely even making eye contact. Leftovers, I finally managed to say, my voice sounding foreign and thin even to my own ears. I don't understand. Everyone confirmed they were coming here. I've been sending updates for weeks. Mom just shrugged, extending the plastic container in my direction. Plans change, honey. Your father was just exhausted from work, and Nana really wanted to host something. You know how she gets when she sets her mind on an idea. I couldn't bring myself to take the container from her. Behind me, the resort staff were discreetly starting to dismantle the elaborate anniversary dinner setup I had spent the entire day perfecting. The centerpieces I had custom designed to incorporate elements from my parents' wedding. The personalized menu cards with their names and wedding date embossed in gold. The beautiful anniversary cake that was still waiting in the kitchen. Why didn't anyone tell me? I asked, struggling to keep my voice from cracking. I've been here since noon, making sure everything was perfect. The staff here has been working all day. I confirmed with everyone just last week. Jessica finally glanced up from her phone. We did tell you. Mom just texted you. An hour ago, I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. After I had already been waiting for hours, after everything was already set up. Chloe, you're overreacting, Mom said, her tone shifting to one I knew all too well from childhood, the one she used when she thought one of us was being unreasonable. It's just dinner. We can do the resort thing another time. Just dinner? I repeated, gesturing wildly toward the lodge behind me. I planned this for 2 months. I spent $6,000 to rent out this entire place for our family. That, at least, got their attention. My mom's eyebrows shot up. $6,000? That's ridiculous, Chloe. Nobody asked you to spend that kind of money. It's Mom and Dad's 40th anniversary. Everyone seemed so excited about celebrating here. Dad himself told me that having everyone together was the best gift he could ask for. Jessica's expression softened just a little. We didn't realize you'd gone to that much expense. But honestly, Chloe, you always do this. You go completely overboard without ever checking if it's what people actually want. Her words felt like a physical slap. What are you talking about? Everyone confirmed they were coming. No one said a single word about Nana's house until I was already here waiting for hours. Mom sighed dramatically. Well, we're here now. We brought you food. I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of this. I took a deep breath, trying to process the absolute surrealism of the conversation. Where is everyone else? Dad? Michael? David? The kids? Still at Nana's, Jessica replied, checking her watch. We told them we'd just drop this off and head right back. The kids are playing games with Grandpa. The casual way she described the family gathering I was supposed to be at sent a wave of nausea through me. So, everyone's together right now? The whole family? Mom nodded, seemingly oblivious to the devastating impact of her words. Yes, it's been lovely. Your Aunt Patricia and Uncle George came over too. George grilled some steaks on that new barbecue we got your father for the anniversary. Michael brought that expensive wine you sent him for Christmas, the one from that vineyard in Napa. Each new detail was another twist of the knife. The wine I had specially ordered and had shipped at great expense, saved for a special occasion, was being enjoyed at a family party I knew nothing about. When did you all decide to do this? At Nana's? I asked, my voice now barely a whisper. Mom and Jessica exchanged a quick, furtive glance before Mom answered. Oh, it just sort of came together naturally. You know how these things go. Something in their silent exchange sparked a terrible suspicion. When exactly did this just come together? More uncomfortable glances passed between them. Jessica suddenly became fascinated by her cuticles. Mom, I pressed. Well, if you must know, Mom finally said, a hint of irritation in her voice. We started planning it last weekend. Your grandmother really wanted to host something for our anniversary, and it just seemed easier for everyone to drive to her house than all the way out here. Last weekend? I repeated, my voice flat. And no one thought to tell me? Even though I've been sending detailed messages about this resort plan for 2 months? We didn't want to hurt your feelings, Jessica interjected. We knew you'd already put so much effort into this resort idea. Effort? I've spent thousands of dollars and countless hours planning this weekend. I took time off work. I've been here all day setting things up. My voice echoed across the empty, silent resort grounds. Mom at least had the decency to look slightly uncomfortable. Well, perhaps there was a bit of a communication breakdown. These things happen in families. A communication breakdown, I echoed hollowly. Is that what we're calling this? Something still wasn't making sense. If you started planning the gathering at Nana's last weekend, why did everyone keep confirming they were coming here? Why did Dad call me on Tuesday to ask if he should pack a suit for the dinner? More thick, uncomfortable silence. Jessica? I turned to my sister, who had always been the worst at hiding the truth. She let out a long sigh, shooting Mom an apologetic look. We were still going to come, but then yesterday everyone started talking about how far the drive was and how much easier it would be to just gather at Nana's, since she'd been wanting to host anyway. And once a few people decided to change their minds. Yesterday, I said, you all decided yesterday to completely change the plans. And nobody told me until I had been sitting here alone for hours. You're making it sound so dramatic, Mom said, her patience clearly wearing thin. We're here now, aren't we? We brought you food. I don't know what more you want from us. I looked at the plastic container she was still holding out. Suddenly, I noticed details I had missed before. It wasn't just any old container. It was from the special set I had given Mom last Christmas, the expensive ones with the locking lids she had admired in a catalog. And it wasn't just random leftovers inside. I could see through the clear plastic now, a perfectly arranged, complete meal. Sliced beef Wellington, roasted vegetables, and even a neat slice of chocolate raspberry cake. You packed this specifically for me, I said slowly, the realization dawning on me. This isn't just random leftovers you grabbed on your way out. You prepared a full plate before you even left Nana's. Mom looked uncomfortable. Well, we didn't want you to miss out on the food because you knew I would be here, alone. You all knew your plans had changed, and instead of calling me yesterday when you decided, you let me drive all the way out here, set everything up, and wait for hours. And your solution was to bring me a container of food. Chloe, Jessica said, her tone now conciliatory, I think you're reading way too much into this. It wasn't some big conspiracy. Plans changed, people got busy, and things just fell through the cracks. Fell through the cracks, I repeated. The phrase echoed in my mind, joining a chorus of other dismissals I had accepted over the years. Just a miscommunication. You're overreacting. You're too sensitive. You always go overboard. Mom checked her watch pointedly. We should really be heading back. David's family needs to leave soon to get the kids to bed. So that's it? You just drop off leftovers and leave? After I spent $6,000 on this weekend? Mom's expression hardened. Nobody asked you to spend that kind of money, Chloe. That was your choice. A choice I made because everyone confirmed they were coming. Because Dad said having the family together was the best gift you could ask for. And we are together, Jessica said, just not here. The simple, devastating truth of her statement hit me with the force of a physical blow. They were together, without me, and had been for who knows how long. How long has the gathering at Nana's been planned? I asked suddenly, suspicious of the too casual way this had all unfolded. Mom's eyes darted away. I told you it came together last weekend. And when did you actually start celebrating today? More uncomfortable silence. Mom. Well, if you must know, we had a small dinner there last night too, she finally admitted. Just family, nothing fancy. Last night, I repeated, my voice barely audible. You've been celebrating since yesterday, and no one thought to tell me. We knew you'd be busy getting things ready here, Jessica said quickly. We didn't want to distract you. The sheer absurdity of her statement might have made me laugh if I hadn't been on the verge of tears. They hadn't told me because they knew I would be busy preparing a celebration that no one ever planned to attend. Mom sighed heavily. Look, we've brought you food. We've explained what happened. I don't know what more you want from us. I looked at them, at both of these women I had spent my entire life trying to please, and I suddenly saw our relationship with a painful, blinding clarity. What I want, I said slowly, is to be treated like I matter, like I'm actually part of this family, not just the person who plans things and sends money and gets a container of leftovers when decisions are made without me. Don't be ridiculous, Chloe. Of course you're part of the family, Mom said dismissively. You're just being dramatic now. Jessica checked her watch again. Mom, we really should go. I told Brian I'd be back to help with bedtime. Fine, Mom said, placing the container on a nearby bench. Your dinner's there if you want it. We'll see you at Christmas, I suppose. And without another word, without even a cursory hug, they turned and walked back to their car. I watched in stunned silence as they drove away, their taillights disappearing down the long resort driveway, leaving me completely alone with a plastic container of food and the wreckage of my carefully planned family reunion. After Mom and Jessica drove off, I stood there motionless for what felt like an eternity, just staring at the empty driveway where their taillights had vanished. The resort was eerily silent, the only sounds being the distant rhythm of waves against the shore and the occasional call of a nightbird. The container of leftovers sat on the bench, untouched, a pathetic consolation prize for all my wasted effort. The resort manager, Kevin, approached me cautiously. Miss Vance, is everything all right? His question shattered my trance. No, I answered, the honesty of it raw in my throat. Everything is not all right. He nodded with a look of genuine sympathy. I've instructed the kitchen to pack up all the prepared food. They can deliver it to your cabin if you'd like, and the anniversary cake too. The kindness of this complete stranger, in such stark contrast to my own family's callousness, brought a fresh wave of tears to my eyes. Thank you, but I couldn't possibly eat anything right now. I understand, he said gently. Everything is paid for, so please, use the facilities as you wish. The dining room is still available if you decide you want dinner later. I thanked him and retreated to my cabin, closing the door behind me with a decisive click. Inside, the space that had seemed so charming and full of promise just hours before now felt like a cruel joke, with its romantic fireplace and stunning lake view, all meant for a family celebration that was never going to happen. I collapsed onto the bed and finally let the tears come. They started slowly, then built into deep, body-racking sobs that seemed to come from some long-forgotten place deep inside me. I cried for the wasted money and the wasted effort, but mostly, I cried for the years I had spent prioritizing a family that so clearly did not prioritize me. When the storm of crying finally passed, I felt hollowed out, but also strangely clearer, as if the tears had washed away a thick film that had been clouding my vision for years. I reached for my phone and called the one person I knew would understand. Sarah answered on the second ring. "Chloe, how's the big family weekend going?" "It's not," I said, my voice raspy and broken. No one showed up. They decided to have a party at my grandmother's house instead, without telling me. "What?" Her shock was palpable, even through the phone. "Are you serious? After all that planning you did? All the money you spent?" "They brought me leftovers," I said, a hysterical, bitter laugh bubbling up from my chest. In a Tupperware container, like I was some chore they needed to check off their list. "Oh, Chloe," Sarah's voice softened with empathy. "I'm so sorry. That's not just inconsiderate, that's cruel." "The worst part is," I continued, the words pouring out of me now, "they've been celebrating since yesterday. They all got together and deliberately cut me out, knowing full well I was here, setting everything up. They just let me wait here for hours before telling me." "That's not a family, Chloe," Sarah said firmly. "That's a group of people taking advantage of your kindness." Her blunt assessment was exactly what I needed to hear. For years, I had been the one making excuses for their behavior, rationalizing their actions, and blaming myself for expecting too much. But hearing it laid out so plainly by someone else made the truth impossible to deny. "I think you've been right all along," I admitted, the words tasting like ash, "about them taking advantage of me." "I wish I wasn't," she replied. "But Chloe, this pattern has been going on for years. You give and give and give, and they just take, without ever reciprocating. When was the last time any of them did something truly thoughtful for you?" I searched my memory, digging deep, and came up completely empty. There were the obligatory birthday texts, the impersonal Christmas gifts, the occasional phone call that always, invariably, ended with a request for money, advice, or some other form of assistance. But genuine, unprompted thoughtfulness, I couldn't recall a single instance in recent memory. "I need to look at something," I said suddenly. "Can I call you back?" After we hung up, I opened my banking app and began scrolling through years of past transactions. The evidence was stark, undeniable, and nauseating. In the past year alone, I had sent Michael $3,000 for car repairs, paid $1,500 towards David's daughter's gymnastics program, contributed $2,000 to Jessica's kitchen renovation, and spent countless smaller amounts on gifts, care packages, and random family expenses. I switched to my email and searched for flight confirmations. 6 trips home in the last year, all paid for by me. Each visit had either been initiated by me or prompted by some family emergency that required my presence and assistance. Next, I opened my text messages and began scrolling through the conversations with my family. A pattern emerged so clearly, it was painful to see. My long, thoughtful messages met with brief, often delayed responses. My questions about their lives answered superficially, if at all. My offers of help accepted without a moment's hesitation. My own requests for emotional support completely ignored or deflected. The calendar on my phone told the same story. Meticulously noted family birthdays, anniversaries, school events, all with reminders set weeks in advance so I wouldn't forget to send a gift or make a call. In contrast, my own birthday 3 months ago had passed with only text messages from my family, despite the elaborate surprise party I had thrown for David just weeks earlier. Most damning of all were the social media posts I had somehow overlooked or rationalized away. Family gatherings I hadn't been invited to. Group photos with captions about everyone being together, with me conspicuously absent. Celebrations of achievements I had never even been told about. It was all evidence of a rich family life that was continuing on without me, that perhaps even preferred to continue without me. I called Sarah back, my voice steadier this time. "I've been so blind." "Not blind," she corrected gently, "just hopeful. You wanted to believe the best of your family. There's nothing wrong with that. But there is something wrong with letting myself be used," I said, a new resolve hardening in my voice. "With pouring all my emotional energy and financial resources into relationships that are completely one-sided." "So, what are you going to do?" she asked. It was a good question. The old Chloe would have swallowed her hurt, made excuses for everyone's behavior, and tried even harder to win back their approval and inclusion. But that Chloe had been left standing alone in an empty resort, waiting for a family that had no intention of ever showing up. "I don't know yet," I answered honestly, "but I know I can't keep doing this." We talked for another hour, Sarah providing the sympathetic, non-judgmental ear I so desperately needed. When we finally hung up, it was past midnight. I was emotionally drained but too wired to sleep. Outside my cabin window, the moon cast a shimmering silver path across the lake, looking both inviting and peaceful. On a sudden impulse, I changed into warmer clothes and walked down to the private beach. The night air was cool but refreshing, carrying the clean scent of pine and water. I found a weathered wooden bench near the shore and sat down, watching the gentle waves and listening to the rhythmic sound of water meeting land. For the first time in years, perhaps in my entire adult life, I allowed myself to think about what I wanted, not what my family needed or expected from me. The realization that I barely knew the answer was startling. Who was Chloe Vance when she wasn't being the reliable daughter, the generous sister, the doting aunt? What did she enjoy? What did she dream about? What did she hope for? I had spent so many years defining myself by my usefulness to my family that I had completely neglected to develop an identity independent of them. My apartment in Boston was filled with family photos, but very few signs of my own personal interests or hobbies. My vacation time was always allocated to family visits. Even my financial decisions revolved around keeping funds available for their needs. As I sat there watching the moonlight on the water, a memory from college surfaced. My roommate Sarah had once asked me why I spent so much time and energy on family obligations. "They're my family," I had answered, as if that explained everything. "Family takes care of each other." "But it's supposed to go both ways," she had replied. "They should be taking care of you too." I had dismissed her words back then, convinced she simply didn't understand the special, unique bond our family shared. But sitting alone at a resort I had paid for, waiting for a family that had chosen to celebrate without me, her words came back with painful clarity. Family should go both ways. Love should go both ways. Relationships should go both ways. As dawn began to break over the lake, painting the sky in delicate shades of pink and gold, I made a decision. I would not leave the resort early, as a part of me was tempted to do. I had paid for this weekend, and I was going to enjoy it, even if I was alone. More than that, I would use this time to begin the process of rediscovering who I was and what I wanted from my life and my relationships moving forward. The first rays of sunlight touching my face felt symbolic, the dawn of a new understanding, and perhaps a new chapter in my life. For the first time since arriving at the empty resort, I felt something other than hurt and humiliation. I felt the faint, unfamiliar stirrings of liberation. I returned to my cabin just as the resort was starting to come to life, with staff members beginning their morning routines and early rising guests heading toward the main lodge for breakfast. After a quick shower, I made a decision that felt both small and monumental. I would have breakfast in the main dining room rather than hiding away in my cabin. Dressed in clothes I had originally packed for family activities, I made my way to the restaurant. The hostess greeted me warmly, with not a hint of pity in her expression. "Good morning. Table for one?" "Yes, please," I replied, realizing that these might be the most honest words I had spoken in years. Table for one. Just me. Not waiting for anyone. Not accommodating anyone else's preferences or schedule. Over a leisurely breakfast of blueberry pancakes and fresh, strong coffee, I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. I titled it, Family Financial Record. With methodical, almost surgical precision, I documented every single dollar I had spent on family matters over the past 5 years. Gifts, loans, travel expenses, event planning, emergency assistance, everything. The final total made me gasp out loud, drawing a few curious glances from nearby diners. $92,000, nearly $100,000 that could have been in my retirement account, or used for a down payment on a home, or invested in my own education, or simply enjoyed on experiences that brought me personal joy. Instead, it had all flowed in one direction, toward a family that could gather for 2 full days of celebration without even bothering to tell me. Next, I created a new document and titled it Personal Boundaries, something my therapist had suggested years ago that I had never taken seriously. I began listing specific, actionable changes I would implement immediately. 1. No more sending money without a formal, written agreement for repayment. 2. No more last-minute flights home for non-emergencies. 3. No more planning or bankrolling family events without shared financial responsibility and input from everyone. 4. A new one-for-one gift-giving policy. 5. No more rearranging my entire schedule to accommodate everyone else's whims. As I typed, each new rule felt like I was removing a heavy weight I had been carrying for so long. I had forgotten it wasn't a natural part of my own body. By the time I finished my coffee, I had a comprehensive list of boundaries and a clear plan to enforce them. Closing my laptop, I noticed a flyer for the resort's daily activities. Today, they were offering guided nature walks, kayak rentals, a wine tasting event, and an evening yoga session on the beach. On an impulse, I walked over to the activities desk and signed up for all of them. This weekend was now going to be mine, filled with things that I wanted to do, not obligations or responsibilities I had toward others. The morning nature walk introduced me to Beatrice, a silver-haired woman in her 70s, with striking blue eyes and an air of serene confidence. As we walked the wooded trail behind the lodge, she asked what had brought me to the Overlook Lodge. Before I could even think of a polite, deflective answer, I found myself telling her the unvarnished truth. I planned a family reunion that no one showed up for. Instead of the awkward sympathy I expected, Beatrice let out a rich, genuine laugh. "Oh, my dear," she said, "welcome to the club." Over the next 2 hours, as we identified wildflowers and spotted woodland creatures, Beatrice shared her own story of learning to prioritize herself after decades of thankless family caregiving. Her husband had passed away young, leaving her to raise 3 children all by herself. She had devoted everything to them, putting her own dreams and needs on the back burner indefinitely. It took my 60th birthday, which I spent alone because everyone was too busy, for me to finally realize that I had trained them to see me as a resource, not a person, she explained as we paused by a small, trickling waterfall. They loved me, I suppose, but they didn't respect me because I had never taught them how to. "How did you change things?" I asked, seeing my own situation so clearly in her words. "First, I got angry," she said simply. really properly angry. Not the kind you swallow down with a polite smile, but the kind that fuels real action. Then I made a list of all the things I wanted to do with my life before it was too late. And finally, I started saying no. Often, and without feeling guilty about it. Was it hard? Did your family resist? Of course they did, she chuckled. People don't like change, especially when the old way benefited them so much. But eventually, the relationships that were meant to survive did, just in much healthier forms. And I discovered parts of myself I never even knew existed. After the walk, Beatrice invited me to join her for lunch, and I gladly accepted. Over grilled salmon and a fresh salad, she asked me questions that no one had asked me in years. What were my passions? What did I enjoy doing in my free time? What dreams had I put on hold? I struggled to answer, which was revealing in and of itself. I guess I've been so focused on being there for everyone else that I've completely neglected to figure out what I want. Then this weekend is perfect, Beatrice declared. Consider it your Independence Day. The afternoon passed in a wonderful blur of activities I had chosen purely for myself. Kayaking solo on the vast lake gave me a sense of freedom and self-reliance I hadn't experienced in years. During the wine tasting, I discovered I had a strong preference for bold, dry reds over the sweet whites my family always chose at gatherings. By the time I joined the sunset yoga session on the beach, I felt more connected to my own body and mind than I had in decades. After dinner, back in my cabin, I opened my laptop again and drafted an email to my family's group address. I worked through multiple versions, deleting angry accusations and tearful pleas, finally settling on a message that was clear, direct, and completely unapologetic. Dear family, after considerable reflection, I've realized our relationship has become fundamentally unbalanced. I've attached a spreadsheet detailing the financial support I have provided over the past 5 years, which totals over $92,000. Moving forward, any financial assistance will require a formal loan agreement with clear repayment terms. Additionally, I will no longer be planning or financing family events without equal contribution and participation from everyone involved. If you wish to include me in family gatherings, I expect the same level of consideration and communication that you extend to each other. This is not about the money. It is about respect and reciprocity. I finally value myself enough to require both. Chloe. I attached the detailed spreadsheet, took a deep, shaky breath, and hit send before I could second-guess myself. Then I did something I had never done before. I turned off my phone, just in case my family needed to reach me, and I slept more soundly than I had in years. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of lightness I hadn't anticipated. I had expected to feel anxious, waiting for the angry responses to roll in, but instead I felt curiously detached, as if stating my truth so clearly had finally freed me from the burden of managing everyone else's reactions to it. Over breakfast, I met Beatrice again, and she listened attentively as I described the email and my new boundaries. Good for you, she said, her eyes crinkling in approval. Now comes the hard part, sticking to those boundaries when they test them, which they absolutely will. Any advice? I asked. Remember that guilt is just the discomfort of changing unhealthy patterns, she said. It doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. In fact, it usually means you're finally doing something right. As checkout time approached, Beatrice and I exchanged contact information. I spend my winters in Boston, she mentioned. Perhaps we could meet for coffee when I'm in town. The prospect of a friendship based on mutual interest rather than obligation felt incredibly refreshing. I'd like that very much, I replied sincerely. Before leaving the resort, I stopped at the front desk to speak with Kevin, the manager who had been so kind. "I wanted to thank you for your compassion," I told him, "and to let you know that despite the circumstances, I had a wonderful weekend." He smiled warmly. "I'm so glad to hear that. Sometimes the best journeys are not the ones we planned." As I drove away from the Overlook Lodge, I realized I was not the same person who had arrived just 2 days earlier, that Chloe had been defined by her usefulness to others, constantly seeking approval and inclusion through self-sacrifice. This new Chloe was just beginning to explore who she might become when she valued herself as much as she had always valued everyone else. My phone, which I had finally turned back on, was chiming with notifications. Multiple messages from family members, their tones ranging from defensive and accusatory to outright manipulative. My mother's message particularly stood out. "I don't understand why you're being so dramatic and hurtful after everything we've done for you." In the past, a message like that would have sent me into a spiral of doubt and guilt. I would have immediately apologized, backtracked, and done whatever was necessary to restore harmony, even at my own expense. But as I drove through the beautiful Vermont countryside, Beatrice's words echoed in my mind. Guilt is just the discomfort of changing unhealthy patterns. Instead of replying, I connected my phone to the car's speakers and called my real estate agent, a woman I had been avoiding for months as I diverted my down payment savings to family needs. "Caroline, it's Chloe Vance. I'm ready to start looking at condos again. Yes, as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be perfect." As the call ended, I felt a surge of excitement about this tangible step toward prioritizing my own future. The road ahead was going to be challenging as I navigated these changed relationships and established new patterns. But for the first time in years, it was truly my road. 3 months after the resort incident, as summer mellowed into early fall, I sat on the balcony of my new condo, which overlooked the Boston Harbor. The morning sun cast a golden glow across the water, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of the potted herbs I had started growing, a new hobby I discovered I loved. My coffee steamed beside my laptop, where I was reviewing the final changes to my new personal website. After years of helping everyone else achieve their goals, I had decided to use my financial expertise to launch a side business as a financial independence coach for women. The journey to this moment had not been easy. The initial responses to my email had been exactly as Beatrice predicted: defensive, guilt-inducing, and occasionally hostile. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was tearing the family apart. Jessica accused me of keeping a creepy spreadsheet to hold over their heads. Michael insisted that I had offered the money freely, and it was weird and petty to bring it up now. Only David had responded with a glimmer of reflection, acknowledging that the family dynamic had indeed become unbalanced, though even he balked at the idea of formal repayment plans. For 2 weeks, I maintained complete radio silence, giving myself the space to process their reactions without getting pulled back into the old toxic patterns. When I finally did respond, it was with brief, clear messages, reiterating my boundaries without justification or apology. I declined invitations to family events that felt like attempts to guilt me back into my old role, but I did accept an invitation to have lunch with David, the only one who had shown any sign of self-awareness. That lunch proved to be a turning point. Away from the group dynamic, David admitted that the family had taken my generosity for granted. "You were always so willing to help that we just stopped seeing it as exceptional," he explained. "It just became the expected baseline. Did you ever wonder why I wasn't included in some of those family gatherings?" I asked directly. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. honestly? Sometimes it was because when you were there, everyone just relied on you to handle everything. Other times, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I think people felt judged by how much you were willing to do. Your level of giving kind of made everyone else's contributions seem inadequate by comparison. His honesty, though painful, was illuminating. My overfunctioning had created resentment on both sides, me resenting their lack of reciprocation, and them resenting the implicit expectations my behavior created. Over the following months, I maintained my boundaries firmly but without animosity. I declined requests for money, but offered practical advice instead. I attended some family functions, but always arrived and left on my own schedule. I brought reasonable contributions to potlucks instead of catering entire events. Most importantly, I invested significant time and resources in my own well-being and future. I joined a women's hiking group, started therapy with a counselor who specialized in family dynamics, took a photography class, and made the decision to invest in my own home rather than continuing to rent while subsidizing my family's lifestyles. The mortgage approval letter for my waterfront condo had arrived the previous week, a tangible symbol of my new priorities. Not everyone in my family adapted well. My mother still made passive-aggressive comments about how I used to be so generous and cared more about family. Jessica had largely withdrawn, apparently finding our relationship wasn't worth the effort without the practical benefits I had previously provided. But David and I had started to develop a more authentic connection, one based on mutual respect rather than one-sided giving. And surprisingly, my father had begun reaching out more directly, suggesting one-on-one lunches where we actually had conversations about our lives, not just family logistics. As promised, Beatrice had contacted me upon her return to Boston, and our coffee meeting had evolved into a weekly tradition. Her perspective, as someone 20 years further along a similar journey, provided invaluable guidance and reassurance. Under her mentorship, I had started developing workshops on financial independence for women, combining my professional expertise with my personal experience of breaking free from financially exploitative relationships. The most profound change, however, was internal. I no longer defined my worth by what I could do for others or how much I sacrificed. I had learned to recognize the difference between genuine generosity, which springs from a place of abundance, and the compulsive giving that had come from my own insecurity and a desperate need for approval. I had discovered that self-care was not selfish but necessary, and that boundaries were not walls, but healthy definitions of where I ended and others began. My phone chimed with a calendar reminder, Mom, Dad, 10:30 a.m. coffee. Today would be the first time I had seen both my parents together since the anniversary debacle. I had suggested we meet at a neutral cafe rather than at their home, another small but significant boundary. The fact that they had agreed without protest suggested some small evolution in their understanding of our new relationship. As I prepared to leave, I checked my email one last time and found a message from a woman who had attended my first financial independence workshop the previous weekend. Chloe, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your story and expertise. After our session, I finally found the courage to stop paying my adult son's bills and start funding my own retirement. For the first time in decades, I feel hopeful about my future. You've changed my life. Her words brought tears to my eyes. The pain of my family experience was slowly transforming into something meaningful, helping others avoid or escape similar patterns. My personal healing was creating ripples far beyond my own life. The coffee meeting with my parents went better than I expected. There were awkward moments, and old patterns certainly tried to reassert themselves. I noticed my mom, out of pure habit, expectantly pushing the bill toward my side of the table. But when I simply said, "Shall we split this 3 ways?" she agreed without comment. Small steps, but meaningful ones. That evening, as I was preparing dinner in my new kitchen, my phone rang with an incoming video call from David and his family. His kids proudly showed me their art projects and performed newly learned dance moves. Before ending the call, David said something that would have once seemed impossible. "Hey, we're planning a small cookout next weekend. Nothing fancy. Everyone's just bringing something. No pressure at all, but we'd love to have you there if you're free." The casual invitation, completely devoid of obligation or expectation, felt like a massive breakthrough. "I'd like that," I replied sincerely. "I'll bring my roasted vegetable salad." "Perfect," he said with a genuine smile. "Just yourself and the salad. That's all we need." As I ended the call, I realized that was perhaps the most profound lesson of my entire journey. Being valued for who I am, not for what I provide or how much I'm willing to sacrifice. Building relationships based on mutual respect and reciprocity rather than obligation and utility. Understanding that love should not require self-erasure or endless giving without return. Standing on my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, I felt a deep, abiding sense of peace. The path forward would still have its challenges. Some relationships might never fully recover. Old habits would try to reassert themselves, and finding the balance between healthy giving and self-protection would require ongoing vigilance. But I had found my voice, and I had found my value, and I would never again allow either one to be diminished. Have you ever had to establish boundaries with people you love? What helped you maintain those boundaries when they were tested? I would love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing to hear more stories about navigating complicated family dynamics and finding your own worth. Remember, sometimes the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for others, is to clearly define what is and isn't acceptable in how people treat you. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to honor your own worth in all your relationships.